Well, if the church is broken and you're the genius to see it, why do you go fix it? Like, how far are you willing to go with this? And believe me, that question is right in front of you.
The barbarians are at the gates, right? The people who want to completely destroy Western culture, they're here. They're here telling you there's no difference between a man and a woman. It's like, they're right there. And if we don't have something to push back with, well, then they're going to win. Bottom line. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Man vs. World. As always, we are joined by the wonderful Pete. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing great, Mark. Today we're talking about whether affirmations are total BS, why dating apps are a waste of time, why you have too many friends, and the power of dopamine detoxing. And speaking of dopamine detoxing, Mark, I know you're doing one right now. And some people might think that it's a little extreme. And so I actually wanted to confront you live on air right now. Mark, don't you need balance in life? Why are you cutting out all of this stuff, man?
Well, it's a really good question. I'm what am I, like 3 or 4 weeks into my dopamine detox where I pretty much cut out all electronic entertainment. And I said before I'd watch a show and stuff with my wife here or there, or watch a show with friends or something every once in a while for the social aspect. Haven't even done that. My wife's just been in the mood to read, so it's like, all right, guess we're not watching anything then. And I have no friends, so no, it's just been busy. So it's been going good. I've been a little bit less than perfect. There was some stuff that happened with the business where it was just a frustrating thing. I put a lot of effort into something that didn't pan out well, and I just like unplugged for it was probably about 16 minutes of failure where there was I was on YouTube because I was doing work on YouTube, and then there was a thumbnail for like are 3-pointers overpowered in basketball or something like
yes,
that?
They
and
are,
I'm like, are they? And then I watched this. I just clicked it, and then I was sucked in because I used to be a basketball player and I love the sport. And I was just like, I don't know. I think it's pretty well balanced, and it was a good video. But I screwed up for 16 minutes, and I think I maybe have scrolled 3 or 4 tweets at certain points. So it hasn't been perfect, but by no means am I screwing up majorly. Now, it's interesting though because it just makes you move forward. Like when you're not consuming stuff like this, you just get bored and you're just like, well, I guess I'll do the dishes, or I guess I'll keep working on that project. I guess I'll read a book. And for me, it's just turned into productivity, which is great because that's exactly what I need right now. I've got a million different threads running, and I'm trying to close them off, collapse them down so that I can really focus on the stuff that I want to focus on. So the dopamine detox, it's magic in terms of getting you focused and getting you productive. Now, I know, what did our one commenter call it? On our last video when I was talking about this, if we actually look at what he said, I thought it was really interesting. I was talking about my dopamine detox in it, and he said, his name was Zissou, and he says, this reminds me of an article I read from Knees Over Toes guy talking about completing his challenge of 1 year without entertainment. He's now on day 500 or something, and said he has supercharged his life and his business and has no cravings for those things. Same thing with him cutting out cheat meals. He no longer even craves them. I'm taking notes from you and him embodying this new lifestyle and seeing where it takes me. The big secret is that you actually don't miss out on anything when you cut this bullshit out. The feeling of missing out on the culture of these consumption-based lifestyles is an illusion. No one notices or cares, and nothing of substance is ever occurring within it. It's kind of mind-blowing to realize that our natural state is best served by being free of these mini vacations and just going full retard on our own lives. I've been scrolling way too much lately and can notice how congested my thoughts become when I am dreaming, and the content and quality of imagination in my dreams. In other words, my subconscious processing and connection to myself is diluted, dulled down to an immense degree. Now, I don't know about the dream stuff, it probably is, but he brings up a really good point in that you're not really missing anything. Like, you're not missing anything important. Like, the best argument I can find for like regular media consumption is that you don't miss out on some like big news story that could save your life. It's like, oh, there's a hurricane coming, but you don't watch the news or something like that. Like, that's like the best thing I can come up with. Otherwise, it's just like, well, did you see that new thing on Netflix? And it's like, no. It's like, oh. It's like, if that's all they can talk about, well, then, like, is that really the person that you want to be spending a bunch of your time with anyway, right? Like, I guess maybe in certain social settings, you might feel a little bit of, oh, I didn't see that movie. Oh, I didn't follow that story or whatever. But wouldn't you much rather be the guy with a thriving business who, a guy with hobbies and passions and that sort of thing? Like that knees over toes guy you're talking about, he's like a fitness guy, and I'm very inspired by him. He did a whole year without any cheat meals, like he's saying, did none of this, no entertainment, and his business is just taken off. He's a machine. He's got really good things that he offers, like the fitness community and stuff like that. And I think that's the way to do it. I think that's what we're gonna see what the evolution that is the next evolution of personal development, where people just cut this stuff. It's like they are just in their lane doing their thing, and maybe they utilize these platforms to promote their stuff or whatever, but it's not what they live on. That's not where they get their enjoyment, because if you cut this stuff out, well, then you'll be forced to find enjoyment elsewhere. And almost everywhere else, the enjoyment you will find, as long as you don't turn toward mind-altering substances, everywhere else you will turn, you will have more fulfillment doing this kind of thing. So yeah, going full retard on our own lives, it actually is just like living normal life prior to this decade, or the past few decades, I guess. Whenever TV became the thing that people just got glued to. When did that happen? 50s, 60s?
Yeah, pretty much.
So prior to that, that's all you could do is just go hard on your own life. And man, today it's like a superpower. So I definitely highly recommend it.
Right on. So, Mark, I've heard that you're rethinking your stance on affirmations. So what's that all about? Is it total BS or?
Good question. Okay. Because in the past, I used to look down on the affirmations. This is the idea of I am loved by everyone I know. I have abundant wealth. And
you're saying that to yourself.
Yeah, it's like a self-development practice where you just read off this list of I am statements of things that you want to have. And I think the way that a lot of people do it, it is kind of bullshit. People who are trying to manifest their dreams using the power of The Secret, just if I just think about it, then it'll magically happen in my life. I don't think many people really buy that, but there's definitely some. And I also think that it can cause some additional problems. But if you're lying to yourself, it's everybody loves me, and when in reality you're a pain in the ass jerk who people can't stand. There can be some issues with self-denial and that sort of thing. And that's the way I always thought about it. I never really was able to generate much practical connection to the process until recently. And what I really see the value of it is if you target your affirmations properly and you use it to just get your mind thinking about the things that you want most, well, it actually can fill you with a tremendous amount of motivation. And that's the trick, because for me, when I played with affirmations previously, it was always kind of just a only partially thoughtful wish list of yeah, that'd be nice, and that would be nice. I would like that. Oh yeah, lots of money. Cool. Yeah, I want that. Oh, cool. And those things, they would sound good in my head, but they didn't really move something inside of me. So when I started to actually figure out what are the things that I really, really want? What are the things that would light me on fire, right? What are the things that would fill me with massive motivation when I think about them? And then that's when I started making those my affirmations, right? And just repeating them in the beginning of the day, it's just a way to kind of stoke the fire, right? Your desires and your motivation, it is like a fire. It's something that it needs oxygen on it. Otherwise, it'll just kind of burn down to a little flame or go out entirely. And so the idea of, I think, using affirmations properly, it's a way to simply stoke up your motivation. If you just think about those things that you want, you'll get pumped up, then you'll want to go get it, right? As long as you know how to target them properly, and as long as you don't have a bunch of limiting beliefs in the way of you pursuing it, then yeah, it's just a motivational technique. You think about what you want, fills you with motivation, go get it. And I've been doing this a lot lately, and I've been really liking it. And it's also useful if you're doing a dopamine detox. Like if you don't have, like you're like, oh, I'm not gonna watch this TV show, and then you have nothing to do, and you're like, I don't feel like doing anything. Well, when you return to your affirmations, you can kind of build some motivation. And it's like, oh, well, I didn't feel like doing anything, but now after I thought about that thing I really want, I could go do a little work on that. And so that's where I think they shine. And so I retract my not all my previous skepticism. I still have good points, but I'm not against them now. In fact, I am for them if they're used in this way.
Well, it's interesting you say as long as you don't have a bunch of limiting beliefs in the way, because I think what a lot of people maybe do, and I'm speculating here, but maybe they stand in the mirror and they say, I'm strong, I can do it, I can do, whatever I want. And then they go off, and the rest of their day, the remaining 23 hours of the day, their head is filled with a bunch of just head trash. And I think there's a lot of truth in, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And I think affirmations are a good way of maybe steering your thoughts towards the correct direction. But if you're not meditating on that, if you're not revisiting that in the middle of the day, it's interesting that you do it often in the middle of the day to stoke the fire. That makes a lot of sense, Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, it's a neurochemical thing. It's like, how can I get my brain juice flowing in the right direction? And the easiest way you can do that is think about your rewards, like the things you stand to gain. And now, to be clear, I don't think it's useful to just fantasize for a significant period of time as if you had already arrived, because that can become like a diversion in and of itself, where it's like you just imagine yourself being rich and famous. And if you're actually playing out having it, well, then you're kind of giving yourself the reward already, and it becomes its own form of escapism. It's like, it's like the guy's like, I wish I was rich and I wish I was powerful. And then he goes and plays a video game where he's a superhero. It's like, well, you're kind of getting it. You're actually taking the fire away then when you do it like that. So it's like, this isn't about fantasizing. It's about thinking about something that you want and filling yourself with desire. And so you have to actually already have the capacity to hold desire. And this is something that, like, quitting porn and quitting masturbation probably does more than anything else, because so many guys say that they can't even hold their own desires, like sexually, first and foremost. But if you can't hold your sexual desires, you're probably not gonna be able to hold any of them. And it's like, what I mean by that is, like, most guys, they'll get a sexual urge, like, oh, I gotta go jerk off, oh, I gotta go watch porn, because they can't stand the feeling of their own desire inside of them. And like, learning how to hold that's actually your power. It's kind of like pressure, right? The more pressure that you can contain inside of yourself, the more continuous and focused stream of effort you can put out into the world. And so you have to strengthen yourself. You have to fortify yourself to some degree in order to be able to actually utilize this. Otherwise, you're just going to get so pent up, and then you're going to be like, I can't do this. And then you're going to, escape into something. You're going to blow that energy on something not very useful to you.
Alrighty, next up, I wanted to talk about this question that our buddy Dan from the Self Mastery Club sent in. So he asks us, what do you guys think? And he said you guys, or y'all actually is what he said. So he didn't say you, Mark. I'm gonna have to spill some beans here, okay? And you may not like it, but we'll see. Okay, this is the question.
Let's get the hot, spicy Pete take on this then.
Okay, so he's talking about universal basic income, and he's talking about the fact that it's kind of a tricky proposition for him. And he says, I cannot imagine a policy that would more certainly guarantee a bunch of Zuck-like zombies, which is a really great term, by the way. Side note.
Zuck-like, meaning like plugged into the metaverse and whatnot.
Yeah. But he goes on to say, however, there will always be a segment of the population who, through lack of interest or resources or capacity, will not be able to take advantage of the types of opportunities provided by the digital age. These folks used to have reliable, route for providing for their families and finding a sense of purpose through honorable working class jobs. So, what should be done for these folks in the future? They're not useless. They're not worthless. Kind of talking about a clip that we reacted to in a couple podcast episodes ago. But it's thorny, he says. Sometimes I think, well, we need to hold back technology in order for some of these jobs to remain, but I hate that idea too. It's authoritarian, wouldn't work, and it would reduce competitiveness for whichever country engages in it. So what are your thoughts, Mark?
Well, when it comes to like UBI, we basically already have it, like in terms for like, people who are low enough income, they're already getting government assistance and that sort of thing. So it's like we do already have it. Now, is this something that's gonna? I guess it's not universal, right? It's like targeted basic income, I guess. So the question is really, will people who have these more standard jobs, like that may be automated away, what do we do with them? It's like, will they just fall into government assistance, or will they change and adapt, right? And I think that's really what it is. It's like industries have disappeared like constantly, right? Like this is not a new thing, right? The printing. Well, I'm trying to think of good examples. Like, so the railroads obviously were the biggest thing ever for a period. Mm-hmm. Now, they're not as big of a deal. It's more airlines. Maybe, like there are towns where there is a bunch of mining, and then, the mining either dried up or they, canceled it or whatever. And then people couldn't mine anymore, right? Like, so it's not a new thing. Sometimes jobs disappear. Sometimes industries disappear. And yes, there will be a segment of that population who's maybe too old, too stubborn, too whatever, to want to find something else to do. But I think the assumption right now is that, actually, the jobs that these kind of people are capable of doing will just disappear, period. And I just don't know if I believe that's true. I don't know. It's hard to say because of how the world is going and how people's preferences and ideas around work are going. Because you were telling me an interesting thing just before this. What were you saying about like the truck drivers and whatnot?
Yeah, so here's the interesting thing, right? The average age of an employed commercial truck driver is 48 years old. The average age of a farmer in the United States is 57. It's interesting to note.
Right. So it's like those jobs aren't going away yet. Arguably truck drivers, maybe they will eventually, but they're not yet. And part of it's going to be a supply and demand sort of thing where it's like, okay, the people who move into these spaces, they're just going to get paid more. Maybe farmer will be the new lawyer in terms of income. Like it's hard to say. Like, I think what we're really going to see though is that the creative people in the world are going to seize on opportunities. And my hope is that it's not just the evil creative people, right? Right. I hope it's not just, I think what we're going to see, particularly like with farmers and stuff like that, this is wild speculation, but I think we're going to see kind of farming as it is, it's going to shift. Like right now, there's a lot of farmers sort of like in the middle of like trying to stay small, but also like trying to survive with all these big, like massive corporations who do the farming. And I think we're going to go like sustainable agriculture. That's going to be one group. And then it's going to be like Bill Gates. And Bill Gates owns all the rest of Bill Gates and Monsanto owns the rest of it. And so right. I think that the farming's actually due for a resurgence. And I think there's going to be, hopefully, more and more people interested in that. I think modern living is poisoning people. And I could see the potential for, some charismatic person or people to build a movement toward more sustainable agriculture, locally grown food, that kind of thing. I think that's actually going to, that might even catch on in like higher income neighborhoods, which is an interesting thought because, as they get more crunchy granola and health conscious, there's no way to deny the fact that that's the healthiest stuff to eat. So I think there's interesting stuff down the road in the farming side of things, but for everything else, like, I just think that the world's going to continue to evolve, and the people who want to work, they will be able to find work. And like, there might need to be a bit of marketing around it. You know, there will be a whole new market then of like how to train former blue collar people into more modern jobs. And some of them will embrace it, some of them won't. It'll be dependent on how good the marketing is, how good the messaging is, who's the person behind it driving this kind of movement. Like, people can be convinced to do anything as long as the marketing's on point. And so really the future of all this depends on the really the brilliance of the business creators, right? Like, for all I know, Elon Musk will be shuttling people to Mars. Be like, hey, blue collar people, we got to go build a whole bunch of shit on Mars. You want to get trained up and do that? Like, I don't know. It's like, you know, will everyone who goes to Mars need to have a doctorate? No, they're going to need some grunts there to just do like hard shit. Like, you know, like, it's just kind of like, you know, in the past, it's like, oh yeah, the gold mine, it's all done. There's no gold left in these hills. So all you miners, you're going to have to hop on a boat and like go across this, you know, to this new continent and do something over there. It's like, okay, well, except for now, instead of hopping on a boat, you're hopping on a spaceship. I don't know what's going to happen, but like, I think that it's too pessimistic. It's just that we can't see what the future holds. So we just assume there'll be nothing there. And I don't like to think that way.
No, I think it's silly to think that way. I mean, history has shown that that's not the case. You know, there's been crazy advancement in technology over, you know, the last 50, 100 years has been insane. So to think that everybody's going to be out of a job, I don't know. I think these old truckers, you know, they're going to retire. These old farmers are going to retire. And I think exactly what you said is going to happen. It's going to be either super commercialized farming and super commercialized Tesla autopilot, trucks that drive themselves. Or it's going to be hiring your next door neighbor to help you move because he's got a semi and you got to load up all your stuff and you don't want to spend 20 grand to move across the country. So you get a storage container and he drives it there. People do that all the time, you know, and it's going to be truck farms. It's not going to be row crops. It's not going to be, you know, rows and rows of corn. It's like, if you want to be a farmer nowadays, you don't do that. Your margins are too thin. You got to do a little bit of everything, and you got to do a little bit of everything livestock and, you know, with produce as well. And like you said, the local scene, you're absolutely right. Rich people are going to be like, hey, can we buy some, you know, Whole Foods is kind of turning into a joke with terms of their freshness. Apparently they're not really Whole Foods, you know what I mean? In the way that people who usually shop there, their dream customers are being alienated. So it's like there's perfect opportunity everywhere you look, regardless of what work you like to do. You just got to be creative.
Yeah, and I think that we'll be seeing more and more of like a fluid kind of like job structure where it's like maybe, you know, you've got you drive Uber and then you also, you know, do some consulting on this one topic online, and then you also you know, people can hire you to do XYZ. Like the ease in which an individual can get paid for just random crap today is insane. Pretty significant. The problem is that it requires that person to go out and do it all. But I think there are going to be more and more like agencies, for example, they say, hey, I'm looking for work, just like random odd job stuff in my area. And like you just go there, you sign up, and then you basically have a manager who says, okay, you're going to be driving this person from here to here today, and then you're going to be, you know, working on this project over here, and then you're going to be going and doing this kind of thing. Like, I think it's possible that we start seeing things like that. You know, they would have to be developed a bit, and I'm sure, actually, I know some of that stuff already kind of does exist, but yeah, I think
it'll be really interesting.
It'll be interesting to see for sure.
Alrighty, next up, Jordan Peterson sat down with Jonathan Peugeot to discuss a variety of things, but one of the things they talked about is why you should go to church. Let's check it out.
Interesting.
You know, lots of modern people say, well, I don't go to church because I don't believe that. It's like, well, who cares what you believe? Like, who the hell are you anyways? Like, and why do you even care what you believe? And how's that working for you, this belief set that you theoretically have? And so how sophisticated is that? Like, are you Plato or what? It's like, well, here's the church and here's me and I'm right. It's like, well, no, you're not. And first and second, you don't even want to be, because that's a great place to be. Like pinnacle of brilliant wisdom. It's completely solipsistic. No tradition for me, thank you very much. I've got it all right in my head. And even if you are right that the bloody institution is chaotic and decadent in some fundamental sense, it's like, well, good. There's something for you to do. Like there always has been throughout the entire history of mankind, because that's Osiris, right? The once great king who's fallen into disrepair. It's like, well, if the church is broken and you're the genius to see it, why do you go fix it? Well, then you might say, well, we'll just abandon it. It's like, okay, well, fine. You're going to get rid of that, eh? You're going to get rid of marriage. You're going to get rid of funerals. You're going to get rid of Christmas. You're going to get rid of any sense of sacred time. You're going to dispense with the whole history of what Judeo-Christian thought. You're going to dispense with the idea of the sacred nature of the individual. Like, how far are you willing to go with this? And believe me, that question is right in front of you, because there's a wave of radicals who are asking you at every moment, what makes you so sure that there's a difference between a man and a woman?
Yeah. All right, Peterson. Way to get another good conversation going. I admire him because he is not a one-trick pony. And a lot of people who have risen to prominence in self-development fields and stuff like that, it's like you hear a couple of their talks and you've heard it all, right? Mm-hmm. He continues to think, which I really admire. And he thinks hard about things, and he's always trying to find new insights and stuff like that. And so I don't know if this is a new one for him, but I guess it's kind of tied with his other stuff. But that's just a side note. In regard to what he's saying here, I'm right there with him, but I'm speaking. I think it's more pertinent to the people who would still identify as Christian, as a Muslim, as a Jewish person. It's like someone who actually has some religious affiliation. They claim it, but then they distance themselves from the actual spiritual body, from the actual practical practice of the religion. Okay, and that's becoming more and more common. It's like, oh, I'm Catholic, but I don't really go to church. Oh, I'm Christian, I don't really go to church. Oh, yeah, I'm a Muslim, but I don't really do my prayers, that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of people like that. And I think part of it is that the church, it's this highly conservative thing. Religions are generally highly, highly conservative. And so they change very, very, very slowly. But it doesn't mean they don't need to change, right? I'm Catholic and stuff, and I hate a lot of Catholicism. I hate a huge amount of it, actually. And I still go to church. I still practice. I identify as Catholic. And in a lot of ways, my work is me trying to generate new frameworks of understanding this stuff that can appeal to the modern mind, right? But it doesn't need to be just on this deep philosophical level. For example, the music and stuff at churches, a lot of it just stinks. It's just garbage. It's just all right, we need to get people in there who care about it. Hey, I love God, love the idea of this, but the way we're doing it is so boring, bland, and disconnected. It just, chases every single man away, right? Right. Get in there and update things, right? If you don't like the way the religion is being done, okay, you can keep the core message and wrap it in a new aesthetic, okay? This is one of the things where I was talking about earlier, is as long as something's marketed right, people will buy it. And so much of marketing, that's just the wrapper, right? You can sell, you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't market it properly, you don't wrap it in the right kinds of things, it's never going to get sold to anyone. And that's what I think's happening to modern religion, is that we just you kind of just have stuffy older people who are set in their ways. They have an idea of how this is the way it's supposed to be, and they're not updating, right? A simple example of this would be a lot of preachers, for example, a lot of priests, pastors, whatever. Their homilies, back in the day before the internet, people had to come listen to it, and they didn't really have a lot to compare it to. Maybe what they saw on the news and that sort of thing. But now you're competing with vloggers. You're competing with, TikTokers, okay? And these vloggers and TikTokers, dismiss them as you want, they're probably putting a lot more effort into their craft than you are, because they don't get views unless they can be compelling. They don't get views unless they can capture attention, unless they can make a point that people want to hear, right? Like, we need people who, like if Christianity is going to survive, the people who are involved in it, you need to play the game at least as seriously as the dopamine industrial complex is. You need to play the game at least as seriously as a TikToker, okay? And the thing is, I don't see it. I see people phoning in homilies all the time. You know, I see putting together crappy music. I see them doing all of these things, and it's like, why even do it if like what you're going to do is actually hurting you? A lot of times I've been to services and stuff where it's like, I wish you just took the homily out. It's just a big penalty session. It's just here to like make us all listen to you say something that doesn't make any sense, and it's boring as hell. It doesn't provide any sort of like anything. It just makes mass more of a chore. It's like, that's horrible. That's horrible for the life of the Christian, okay? And so it's these kinds of things where, you know, I agree with Peterson. It's like, all right, I see the problem and I'm doing what I can, but like, I think more people need to take that attitude in terms of their own faith. It's like, you know, if you like, there's a lot of opportunity. I think people are dying for real spirituality today, but there's so few people who are willing to put it forth in a manner that's compelling to the modern mind. And I think that's actually why Peterson does so well, is because he does this. He doesn't dance within the like what the trappings of modern religious tradition, like where it's just, you know, the same old thing over and over again. He's trying to present things in new, insightful ways. And I think that sort of evolution needs to be taken to all elements of religion today, if it's going to survive. Because like you said, the barbarians are at the gates, right? The people who want to completely destroy Western culture, they're here. They're here telling you there's no difference between a man and a woman. You know, there's no such thing. Like, there is a woman, but it doesn't even have a definition. Okay? It's like, they're right there. And if we don't have something to push back with, well, then they're going to win. Bottom line.
You know, it's interesting you're talking about these different wrappings. I think a lot of churches, not Catholic churches, not Orthodox churches, but a lot of churches, they've sort of changed their wrapping, but they've also changed their foundation. And then what you have there is you don't have an institution that's competing with the modern culture. You have an institution that is complying with the modern culture. And there's a big, big difference between those two things. And so that is you're absolutely right. People need to be involved, and they need to be involved specifically in treading that line so that they can compete. Exactly. That's abandoning the baby in the bathwater. You know what I mean? That's just letting it go down the drain. So you have to hold on to that, but you also have to compete, and I think church has had a huge resurgence over the last couple of years, and people don't know this because it's not online. But with COVID and everything going to crap, everybody's been like, I need a cause, I need something. And so a lot of people have been going to church who weren't previously. And the church, I think, I don't know this problem. I'm not the guy Jordan Peterson's talking about because I don't know the solution, but maybe one of you guys do. Because what needs to happen is the church needs to offer a cause that's compelling. You look at modern culture. Hey, let's trans rights. We got to get kids their puberty blockers or whatever, and that's the cause. And it's demented, and I think it's evil. But what's the alternative? There's no message there being voiced. There's no cause to get behind.
There is a message there, but it's not being handled right. Like, it's like quit porn. It's like the stuff I'm talking about here. It's like, but the thing is, the priests don't know how to teach people how to quit porn, right? The priests themselves use porn. Okay, right. It's just like, it's screwed up, right? Like there needs to be stronger leadership, and that leadership doesn't come from the top. It's got to come from the bottom. And sometimes the answer to update is not always to make things more modern. Like, I would love it if the mass went back to being in Latin. Let me not understand a damn thing, put on some beautiful music, and like just let me like go have a spiritual experience there. Like let it just be sacred. Get rid of all this folksy crap in your terrible homilies. All of a sudden, I could at least have a deeply holy experience. Throw the incense up. Like, the Orthodox Church, they're much better for this, and I know I can get like Latin rite masses and stuff every once, in some places. And I think people are dying for some kind of tradition, right? Like the right answer isn't always to become more like the modern times. Sometimes you just need to go the opposite direction. And I think there's a place for both, like a good update, like a good like best use of modern stuff, get true creative people in there to make something wonderfully compelling, a true work of art with modern religious services, or take it backward. Like let's make it ancient. Let's make it like, let us feel our roots. Like, let's feel that we're plugging into something that's thousands of years old, right? And I think this goes across like everything. It's like you can take it both ways, but like just kind of flopping around in the middle, not really doing anything, and just, because you're right and you don't need to change, that's not going to work.
Right on. All right. Interestingly, this next one's kind of along similar-ish topics, but this is from Alex Wilson. He's the host of the Amen podcast. I'm sorry to all my atheists listening to the show right now, but there isn't...
You a Christian or something, Pete?
I know,
you
right?
got an agenda?
Oh, man. I'm sneaky. No, but he brings up an interesting point. He shares why people in general, I guess, but specifically he's talking about Christians, should run in small circles. Let's check it out.
Think about Jesus. 12 disciples. Out of the 12, there's 3, Peter, James, and John. They're the ones who see Jesus transfigured. They're the ones that Jesus asked to come and pray with him moments before he gets arrested. There's specific amounts where he is telling these 3, come along with me, leave the 12. And the 12 are important. Andrew, Nathaniel, Bartholomew, all these other guys, they became apostles. They were great guys. But Jesus knew that the circle of a Christian is very small. This is scientifically proven, right, by Dunbar's number of close relationships. 1,500 is the number of people that we can recognize. And then it goes down to 500. And it goes down to 150. 150 is like the relationships, the people that we would actually stop and talk to if we ran into. And then 50 are like friends. 15 is like close friends. And 5 is the closest people in your life. This is the like full amount, the max amount of people and relationships you can have in your life. So now you see how detrimental social media can be to your thought life, to your spiritual life.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. Like, we only have so many slots we can fill up, right? Before we hit overload. And I think that modern technology allows us to take this concept and make it even more useful, right? Like, I think some people, they take it the wrong way. They're like, oh, I can actually just follow thousands of people. No, you can't. You're still at a limit. Technology technically will let you have follow like 50,000 people on Twitter or whatever. You're not actually going to follow them. It's just going to be a sea of noise for you. But what you can do is you can be much more selective about who is in your community, like who is in that circle of yours, because we've become so much less physically located. That's great if you want to go back to that. Like, you just want to know everybody in your town, but you don't need to. Like, you can pick the highest quality individuals from all around the world and interact with them, right? And this is where I think online communities, they can play an important but not total role in your life. You still need real life connections. Absolutely. But instead of like in the past, you didn't really have any choice. It's like, all right, yeah, it's like, Jim, who runs the liquor store down the street, he's part of your community because you see him at mass, and he's always, out on his front porch, and you walk by him every day. It's like, okay, well, maybe you don't have those kinds of relationships. You don't have to fill up your slots with just like the people that just happen to live next to you. You can instead fill those in digitally with the people that you think actually have the highest impact on your life. Like, this is why I think what we do in the Self-Mastery Club is so awesome because it allows guys with a like-minded, interest and motivation and everything like that. They can all connect, and you can fill up your slots there. You can have friends that there's no way you'd be able to have them locally. You can have them with you on a day-to-day basis, right? Me and you, Pete, you live across the country, and we talk almost every day, and it's great. It's fantastic. But you still need some in-person people, right? Like whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, something that gets you involved in your actual physical life, like because there's something there that can't really be replaced. So I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Pete?
I had a couple buddies over yesterday for the first time in several months, and as an extroverted person, it was like getting a shot of adrenaline. It was just like all this energy. A lot of people think that the definition of extrovert and introvert is determined on what your preference is, but it's actually more to do with what gives you energy. So if you spend a lot of time with a lot of people and that gives you energy, then you're an extrovert. If it drains you and makes you exhausted, even if you love it, you're probably more introverted on the scale. So I was like amped up, and interestingly, online stuff, like when I'm talking to, you or the other guys on the team, it's like, it's not quite the same. You know what I mean? In terms of the energy, you still get the social connection, which is very valuable. But so if you're an extroverted person and you think you can get away with just like chatting with people online, I can't, maybe you can't, but it's an interesting kind of dynamic with that stuff. But I'm always a fan of quality over quantity when it comes to friends. Absolutely. And I think that's ultimately the root of this, what he's talking about here.
Yeah. The coolest thing is that you have the opportunity today to make whatever kind of network you want. And once I get, some of my threads pared down that I'm working on right now, that's actually going to be one of my biggest focuses, is trying to work on my network. Because that's something I've kind of neglected. I've just kind of put my head down and I'm going to do my own thing. But I'm just realizing the power in this world is through connection. You can only do so much on your own. Even this idea of self-mastery in the Self-Mastery Club, that's a misnomer, because the path to self-mastery is connection. That's because that's the way our brain works. Our brain is this incredibly social machine. So much of our brain is just tied to whether someone is talking to you or not, whether someone's paying attention to you or not. And we can't even help it. This isn't something wrong with us. It's literally how our brain's wired. It's wired to care about where we are in a hierarchy. It's wired to care about our relationships. And so if you can get those relationships lined up with your goals, well, all of a sudden you're going to just have so much more power available for you to actually pursue them. Okay, so don't underestimate this. Definitely get connected. And if you're having trouble doing it, well, then check out the Self-Mastery Club, because we're always looking for new guys who want to improve their lives and develop their self-mastery, become that force of good in the world. That's what this is all about. This whole show, man versus world, it's like we see this ugliness in the world and we say, all right, I'm going to take responsibility for what I can. First, I'm going to get myself on track, and then I'm going to start making a positive impact. And it's not an easy thing to do. You need a team around you. All of the greatest athletes, all the greatest businessmen, all the greatest people, they weren't just them. They had a whole support network around them. Almost always. There are no stories. I can only think of, any good story has people in it. It always has a cast. The one exception I'm thinking of, or there's two exceptions I can think of. One is Castaway, but that doesn't really count because he made relationships out of the things on the island, like Wilson. You're Wilson, right? That was he needed it, right? That's why he became so obsessed with it, because that's how foundational relationship is to us. And the other book I was trying to think of that didn't have really anyone in it was The Hatchet. I don't know if you guys read that. It was one that we had to read in school growing up. It's a guy, he gets trapped in the wilderness and it's just him and his hatchet. And that only kind of works because it's a survival story. Outside of just baseline physical survival, your brain is not going to give you energy to do anything in a vacuum. If you just lived alone on an island, the only thing you would have motivation to do is to not be alone anymore and survive, right? Once you have survival covered, then it's what do you do? It doesn't really matter. You're just doing basically busy work then. And so if you want to get into your motivation, you have to think about, how does it connect to the world? How does it connect to the people around me? How does it connect to the people who I want to serve, or the people I want to be like, right? And the greater connection that you can get, the more power you're going to get.
And another thing too is it directs that power. So, for example, one of the huge benefits of doing remote work and stuff, especially, not client work, but when you're working together as a team to do something specific, like the fact that I can call, this person over here in Canada and this person over here, on the East Coast, and the fact that we can have the frequency of update that we do keeps everything pointed in the same direction. And that's one huge benefit of actually doing stuff remotely, online, whatever, community you have to point you in the same direction, is the frequency is unparalleled too. Because you know how it is when you got buddies in person, you don't see them that often because it's like, well, I'm busy with this, I'm busy with this. But when it's an online thing, you can connect to that every second of every day if you wanted to. So that's kind of interesting.
Right. And this actually brings up a funny thing that, like, we had one of the guys in the Self-Mastery Club. He was like, he's skeptical of college because he doesn't, like, he wants to run like his own kind of online business similar to like what I do. And he was like, I don't know. I know I don't need college to do that kind of thing. And I was, agreeing with him. Like, you're not going to learn anything you need to learn in college to do this, but you do need something, is what I told him. It's like, you need to join like a certification program. You need to maybe join like a business mentorship. You need to have something, because it's next to impossible, in my opinion, to make significant changes to your life today in a vacuum. Because, like, your ability to just push your own self, there's a limit to that, right? It's why, like, it's easier to get an assignment done when you have someone who's waiting for it. Because you don't want to, whether it's a boss or a teacher or, just a friend or something like that. It's like, when someone's relying on you, it's so much easier to motivate yourself. Without that, okay, there's less motivation, but more, there's the dopamine industrial complex who's just like sitting there waiting to just like, swoop in and hijack your attention and motivation. So it's like, you need some kind of structure in place that can go in opposition to that dopamine industrial complex force that just wants to steal all your time and energy, right? Like, most of us don't have anything like that. We're just floating around in their space, and we wonder why we're not making the kind of progress in our lives that we want. Well, it's because all the passive forces on you are just trying to pull you into distraction, just trying to pull you into escape, just trying to pull you into stuff that doesn't really serve you. And so you need to have a passive support system. And that's why, if you're really intentional about how you build your online connections and you make them in the right way, that support system will just give you free energy, free motivation, free inspiration. So it's, I can't underestimate the power of this stuff. It's life-changing when you get it.
Absolutely. Alrighty, next up, we got a clip from Wheat Waffles. So this guy, I think his like main shtick is he will have people send them pictures of them, and then he will then rate their attractiveness on a scale of 1 to 10. So it's a very entertaining channel. I discovered it recently. And this video, he walks us through some interesting stats from an average-looking guy, his Tinder account. So he gave him a bunch of stats from his Tinder account, and this is him kind of going over the details. I thought it was interesting.
Interesting. And sorry if you guys can hear the lawnmower. Of course, once we start recording, they start mowing right outside my window. But anyway,
shame.
On to it. Let's see here.
This is our male subject, and here's a few more photos. Over the course of 4 months, he swiped a grand total of 16,000 times. Of these 16,000, he swiped right or liked a little under 8,000. Here's the kicker. Just 290 of them matched. So the other 7,000 or whatever didn't. Of the 290 women he matched with, 99 of them had at least one message being sent or received. However, if I'm honest, I think our subject could have done a little better here. I think if he messaged at least 250 of his 290 matches, he'd still have a pretty large funnel to work with before going into trying to arrange dates. Right off the bat, 31, that's almost a third, either left him on read or never even opened his initial message. leaving just 68 conversations for him to work with. Then, of these 68, a further 40 women ghosted him after a short message exchange. Our subject also gave up on 17 conversations himself, which leads him being left with just 11 phone numbers where he can carry on texting over WhatsApp or iMessage. Finally, of these last 11, after all of this effort, after 4 months of painstakingly swiping over 100 times a day, every day, our guy was rewarded with just 3 dates. So as for the other 8 girls, they either gave up on texting, declined his date offer, or simply never turned up. And just to be clear, there is no silver lining to this man's efforts. None of his 3 dates materialized into anything long term.
Poor guy.
Poor guy.
So, I mean, I don't think... Let's see if we go back to this. Where is he?
Over the course of...
Oops. So, he's not... Here, let me turn my face off here.
He's
not a bad
6'3",
looking,
by the way.
He's not a bad-looking guy, okay? He's a normal-looking guy. I mean, that mustache there is questionable, coming from someone who has also had a questionable mustache at a different point in my life. But, like, so it's not... I don't think it's his physique. I mean, there is an issue with that where it's, like, women, they always want to, like, go for the top guy. Like, guys are far less picky than women are. Like, women apparently find 80% of men unattractive, and then the rest
Below
of it,
average,
like...
yeah.
The 20% left, that just means they're not unattractive. It doesn't mean they're actually attractive. So women, their hypergamous instinct, especially on these dating apps, they always want to go for like the super hot guy or whatever. But I mean, I think what this shows more than anything is that our friend here, he's just got no game. He's got no game.
Really?
And maybe, I don't know, on these dating apps, I don't know how much you see. Is it just a picture or is there also a profile?
There's a bio. So he put like he writes articles, and I had to cut it out for time's sake. But here I am explaining it, so maybe I should have left it in. He's got like he writes articles, so he's a freelance writer or something. And 6'3" he put in the bio, which why wouldn't you? You know, I mean, so there you go. And then there was something else too. He's got a dog and he likes snowboarding. I think that's it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of this stuff, it's like. You gotta start understanding like marketing, I guess. It's a different kind of game, right? You know, I would approach it as an internet marketer and be like, all right, well, what kind of hook do I need in order to get a conversation going with a girl? And then once I have a conversation going with her, what's my strategy, right? Like maybe he's just like really boring to text. And it sounds like there was a bunch of people who matched with him who he didn't even follow up with. So like these kinds of posts, a lot of times I think they're used, for doom and gloom for men online. Like, oh, it's impossible. Oh, women suck. Oh, I'm going to become an incel. Oh, I'm a MGTOW now. Like, I get that. I get like things are challenging in some regard, for guys today in the dating world. But doesn't mean it's hopeless, right? Like, yeah, you might have to like learn how to text better. Okay, you might need to learn how to like put together a more compelling bio. Okay, you might have to actually do some work. Sorry, that's just the way it is, right? And it's like, what can you do? You can just complain about it. You can just cry about it, or you can do something about it, right? And so, I don't know. I think guys, they had it. Some guys have this idea that it was just so much better before today. Like it was so much easier to get a girlfriend. Well, instead of just swiping, you actually had to go up and like talk to a girl.
Talk to them.
Okay. That's not really that much easier. You just, instead of getting, passively not swiped on, she's just going to be like, ew, no. You're going to have to deal with stuff like that. Okay. Like in a lot of ways, this is way easier. You got to start just with texting. Come on.
That's all you got to do.
Just play the game.
That.
Okay, like watch a couple videos on YouTube about like how to text on Tinder or whatever it is you're doing. I'm sure there's plenty. And if you don't like the vibe of it, at least get the basic principles of like how to hold a conversation, how to present yourself. Like, I'm still reading Rollo Tomasi's newest book, The Player's Handbook, and I'm not sure if I would recommend that yet. So far, it's a lot There's a lot in there with very little substance, but I'm still not super far in it. So we'll have to see. Maybe that'll end up being a good thing to recommend. But review. I know there's so many guys out there who are like dating coaches who would teach like text strategies and shit like that. Like if you actually cared, you can get better at this. He could increase his numbers massively. It's just, are you willing to put in the work, or are you just lazy and you want everything to come easy to you?
It's interesting that you use the business analogy of becoming a better internet marketer, and I will offer another one. Okay, here's the problem with Tinder. If you have a business that sells a product to everybody, and you're one dude, you're just not going to be able to compete with Walmart. You know what I mean? Like you need. When you're especially like this genre of entrepreneur of like direct response guy, you need to be able to write a page of your dream customer's diary for them. You need to know them. That's how you succeed at this stuff, is you get really, really focused on who you're making products for. Who are you going to craft an offer for? You need to know who you want. And Tinder, you need a niche. And what's interesting is it's like you need this blue ocean, right? There's the idea of the red ocean and the blue ocean. Red ocean being high competition, blue ocean being low competition. Tinder is a red ocean.
I would say it can be a blue ocean, though.
It can if you know what you want. But the problem I think that most guys have is they go on Tinder and they just swipe on anything that's attractive. And that's why they spend 4 months swiping every day, hundreds of times. You don't want to be that guy, in my opinion. You want to be the guy who's incredibly, incredibly picky. You have to have some sort of self-control developed in order to do that, of course, because if you're just trying to get anybody desperately, it's probably not going to work for you. But if you know who your target audience is, if you know who your dream, customer is, so to speak, it's going to be a lot easier for you. And people don't do that on these sites. So if you did that, you got to be more of a weirdo, and you'll attract a weirdo. Weirdos tend to congregate. So
absolutely. I mean, like if he made his like if in his profile and stuff, he's like, yeah, I'm an anime lover and I'm looking for a girl who loves anime. If you don't like anime, you think it's nerdy, then get the heck away from me.
Right.
Like that would actually probably get him more matches. Like, or if you're like, I'm a traditional Christian and I only want traditional Christians who want to wait until marriage. If you're trying to, bang this hot stuff, well, guess what? You're not getting any, and you better just like leave me alone. Like, that kind of thing, while it sounds like crazy, like that will get you more attraction. Like so much of like finding the right person is about pushing the wrong people away. And if you can do that properly, you're going to actually make yourself a stronger brand. And that's what you're pretty much doing here. You're doing this idea. Like that's, speaking of Rollo Tomasi's recent book, like that's what it is. It's all brand management, right? You got to pick your niche. You got to pick who your target is, who your target is absolutely not. Push those people away, say stuff that offends them. And then that'll win the people who are part of your core desire to your side. Okay. And I think, it works in marketing. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work just as well here.
Absolutely. Okay. We've reached the last clip of the day, and I gotta say, this is one of my favorites for a while. Okay, I really like this one. So this is Tim Grover, is the personal trainer. Well, he was the personal trainer of both Jordan and Kobe. Okay, and this next clip tells us a little bit about how he accomplished such an accomplished individual got his first break, and this is kind of the story of how it happened.
Yeah, I think I read this guy's book. I think it's called Relentless. He's a pretty hardcore dude.
And there was a small article in the local newspaper that said Michael Jordan was tired of taking the physical abuse from the Detroit Pistons and wanted to get stronger. Like, okay. So I said, you know what? Now, back then, remember, there's no cell phones, no emails. You just... There's no way of direct messaging, social media. There's no way of direct messaging anybody. So I said, I'm going to write letters. There's 15 players on a basketball team. I'm going to write 14 letters. The one person I'm not going to write a letter to is Michael Jordan. He's the best. Why would he work with an individual that's never worked with a professional athlete? So I wrote 14 letters explaining my background, what I do, what my training philosophy is. And back then, you put a stamp in it, you go to the post office, you put them in the mail, and they get delivered to the player's training facility, and they get thrown in the locker as fan mail. Whether the player decides to open it up or not, that's up to them. Well, obviously, somebody opened up one of the letters, and Michael saw it in somebody else's locker, pulled the letter out, read it, and gave it to the team physician and the athletic trainer during that time and said, hey, find out what this is about.
I have to pause you there just to highlight the fact that most people would not send those letters.
I'm not most.
Yeah. So, I mean, he did get lucky because he didn't even send it to Michael Jordan. He still got it. And in some ways, that might have, from what, little I know of Michael Jordan's psychology from watching, the Last Dance and stuff, he might have actually taken offense. Oh, this guy didn't send one to me. I'm gonna hunt this guy down, figure him out. Like,
That's true. I wonder.
But the big takeaway from here is, like, you gotta shoot your shot, right? You gotta, do the effort, right? Do the effort. Like, so many people, they just want it to, they just want stuff to work out. It's like, I swiped. I don't have a girlfriend. I swiped a lot of people. It's like, yeah, well, did you really follow up? Did you really put in anything to, build your game, right? Like, to try and, so you have something to talk about with, the girl or whatever. It's like, I'm trying to build my business. It's like, okay, how many ads have you written? Well, I sent a couple emails out to my friends and family. It's like, how many? I like 6. It's like, come on, you gotta do the work. You gotta sometimes ask over and over and over and over and over again. Sometimes you gotta get creative about it, right? Like, I've heard all these kinds of things. It's like, you wanna reach someone today. You can do it. A lot of very famous, influential people have open DMs on Twitter. Okay, put together something. Say, here, I can help you with this, this, and this. Send them a message. Offer your services. Don't just be like, hey, can you give me a job? Be like, no, here, I can do this, this, and this for you. Is that helpful? Or if that doesn't work, let me know if there's anything else I can do to help you along in your journey. Okay. If you can get someone's address, like, say there's a business that you're targeting, drop a little money into putting together a gift basket for them. Or maybe you buy them something unique and cool that, you think that they would like. That's maybe you get their name engraved on, if it's a big potential customer, spend a couple $100s. If you stand to make thousands of dollars off of doing business with this person, put a couple $100s into putting together a gift for that person to get their attention. Don't just ping them online. Go the extra mile if this is the kind of stuff that you want to do. There's so much opportunity out there for people who are willing to just put in a little extra effort. So, I like that story. If it wasn't so serendipitous, it would be better, but still good.
It's great. And, I think it's that fear of failure, and it's also a fear of success too, in some weird way. It's like, I don't know where that comes from, but some people do. It's like they just freeze up and they don't take the extra step. And how easy is it to write a letter? And he's talking about it like, there was no internet. You couldn't DM people on Twitter. It's like, yeah, but when you think about the actual effort it takes to write a letter to somebody, and you just copy that letter, 13 more times, it's amazing that people don't do that. It's definitely a mental thing. It's not a physical block. You know what I mean? It's not a monetary block. I don't have money to put a gift basket together. It's like, dude, just put one together. Go to C's Candy. It's $5 for a box. Boom. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So, be willing to, in a world where no one wants to go the extra mile, everybody wants the shortcut. The person who wants to go the long way, who wants to do it the hard way, he's actually got the shortcut, which is the crazy part. So that's, I think, what we have for you, my friends. Hopefully you got some value out of this episode. Hopefully by now the new video from the new series is up and you guys are enjoying that and excited for the next one. I'm going to be bringing that here relatively soon. I got some other stuff I got to prioritize before it, but I'm working hard and hoping to continue to serve you guys on your journey to self-mastery.
We up, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
We up. See y'all then.